Hello to everybody, and I welcome you to our 24th Democracy Talk. If you want, you can turn on your cameras so that we see each other's faces. And well, I'm very happy to welcome our guest speaker, Laura Malimverni from the University of Barcelona. And she will speak today about the Critical Change Lab project, which is a sister project of the Democrat project. So I think it's very important that you join these democracy talks today, Laura. And well, I will not go more into details about the project because I think you will speak about it, Laura. So thank you very much for joining us today. And if you want, you can start with your presentation. And then in the end, I engage all of you here in Zoom, but also in YouTube to contribute to our discussion, the questions you might have. So, but first of all, I hand over to you, Laura, and please feel free to start.
Hi, Diana. Thank you very much for introducing me. As Diana mentioned, I'm presenting the Critical Change Lab project that is a sister project of Democrat project. And as the Democrat project, it's a research and innovation project founded by Horizon Europe program. The project is actually led by the University of Oulu and bring together different partners from different European countries belonging both to academia as well as from a non-formal education institution as well as from art and activist organizations. So it's something that is interesting is that is not just academic partner, but there is a wide variety of expertise within the project. The project basically emerged in response to the growing concern across Europe about young people detachment from democratic life. Its main objective is to develop a flexible pedagogical model that promote an understanding of democracy as a way of life and at the same time aim at fostering a sense of transformative agency among youth. The development of this model is based on an iterative design process. We started with an initial mapping of the democratic landscape in Europe in both formal and non-formal education context through a questionnaire. And after that, we started prototyping the pedagogical model through 3 cycles of participatory action research, which involved both young people as well as educators and aimed at identify the model key pedagogical features. The general approach of the pedagogical model is grounded on some core principles. On the one hand, the idea of being youth-centered, like focusing specifically on youth interest or issues, then its participatory nature, its orientation toward producing change, and the use of artistic and creative method to foster critical reflection, inquiry, and action around emerging eco-social issues. In terms of its structure, each participatory action research cycle was organized into 3 main blocks. The first, we involved both youth as well as educators from either formal or non-formal educational institution. Generally, we worked with youth from 14 until 18 years old. And during each participatory action research cycle, we worked on 3 main blocks. The first block was related to a question and analyze phase. Basically, together with young people, we identify eco-social issues that matter to them and explore this issue through participatory inquiry. After that, we involve the youth in a set of activity aimed at supporting them in imagining alternatives to the current situation and plan possible transformative action to address this issue. And as a transversal feature of this process, we worked on reflective with them on the process they have experiences. Through this approach, the model aims at supporting the development of 4 key competences for critical citizenship. The first competence is the critical understanding of the world. Basically, I'll support young people in grasping the root causes of social and ecological issues. Then a second key competence is related with democratic disposition that has to do both with their ability to enact democratic practices as well as to recognize the presence or absence of democratic practices in their surrounding. Then the third competencies that it's quite specific of the Critical Change Lab. It's the creative and imaginative competence that basically aim at supporting young people in envisioning alternative, new possibility, and other possible future. And finally, the last competence is related with supporting their transformative agency and allow them to feel empowered to act and promote meaningful change. At this stage of the process, all European partners had finished the third cycle of participatory action research. In total, more than 1,500 youth were involved and more than 200 teachers were involved. Currently, we are working on identifying the key learning that emerged through this process. And during the session of today, I would like to share some insight that we are starting to develop from this initial analysis. The analysis is not over yet, so this will be some kind of initial insight. Okay. Something that emerged as a very relevant aspect is how participatory action research work as a privileged frame to understand how young people relate to the world they inhabit. In particular, this allowed us to better understand how young people understand and make sense of emerging contemporary ecosocial issues. Also, it helped us in better understanding how they understand and do democracy, meaning how they conceptualize democratic value, practice, and institution, and how they participate or not in democratic process. And third, it also allowed us to understand how they relate and make sense of their own agency and capacity to drive social change. In relation with this big field for today's session, I have selected 4 key issues that I believe that are particularly useful for opening line of thought and discussion. These issues are aspects that emerge until now in the research, and I believe that they can help us to reflect on how youth subjectivity are shaped in relation to democratic practice and offer clues to think about what is needed in terms of educational policies. One first aspect that emerged in relation to their way of understanding contemporary eco-social issue, it's the tension between the individual and the collective. We observed that young people that worked with us often construct their understanding of eco-social problem through personal and local experience, and that they have a very strong emotional connection with the immediate environment and feel more interested in acting on local issue instead than global issue that they feel that are too far or too big for them. So in this sense, they have a good ability to recognize, understand the complexity of current eco-social challenge, especially those that directly impact them. Nonetheless, often something that happens is that they struggle to connect this personal experience to broader and collective and structural dimension. Somehow they have a perception more related with individual injustice, but they have difficulty in connecting this individual injustice with more structural form of injustice. So in this sense, one challenge of the project, and I think of educational policies related to supporting critical citizenships, it's how to support the connection between the personal and the structural and the political. Another issue that emerged from the research right until now, it's the difficulty that young people have in imagining alternative beyond the narrative of the collapse, the end of the world or the dystopia, or the mere reproduction of what is already here. In our participatory action research cycle, we had included a specific sessions dedicated to envisioning other possibility, and these sessions were generally by far the hardest ones, since there was some kind of block of their imagination in related to imagine alternative to what is already here. Also, another issue that emerged from observing young people was the feeling of disaffection and not being heard, and the lack of meaning in participation. Basically, a lot of them were telling to us, well, nothing will change, even if I do something, this is not working, nobody will listen to us. So somehow there is a general feeling that they are not heard, and that it's really difficult to change things. Mm-hmm. And finally, last aspect that I want to bring on the table for today's discussion, it's that they speak about the lack of experience in democratic practices in their educational context. Basically, they report a scarcity of meaningful democratic experiences, in, for instance, in the school, where generally democratic structure of the school are just representative, and they do not really have an impact of in decision making. So somehow they feel that they do not have real opportunity to engage in practice that allow them to experience democratic action. I think that this issue raises a fundamental concern about how young people subjectivity are shaped in relation to their political engagement, and draw a set of line of inquiry that deserve to be considered both as educator or as policymaker. what emerged here is somehow an image of youth that is emotionally engaged but politically inhibited. It also speaks about a youth which subjectivity are shaped by individualizing framework that promotes narrative related to personal responsibility and meritocracy, and do not really offer tool for collective action. Also, an aspect that we think it's worth to be considered, it's connected to the idea that Mark Fisher described as the colonization of future, that it's a structural blockage of the imagination that is not so much about the individual ability to imagine, but rather about social and cultural mechanism that reinforce the idea that the disaster is inevitable and that there is no alternative to the current system. In this sense, we observe that young people somehow have a difficulty in constituting themselves as active political subject and feel that they are relegated to the role of passive recipients within a system that are very adult-centric. So, well, I think that right now, these are some considerations that we would like to share because we think it can help to think about educational policies and open space for discussion. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura, for your presentation. And I took note of some questions and I would like to address those now. But everybody here in Zoom, please engage as well. If you would like to comment, maybe also especially on your last points. Fabian, if you want, you can start and then I come with mine.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Laura, for the presentation. If I turn back to the beginning of your presentation, you also mentioned the issue of arts. So I'm interested in how art is involved in this project, and are there particular projects you realized with the young people in arts, and what kind of art projects there had been?
Thank you, Fabian. Basically, the way in which we used art strategy was through a rich methodological experimentation with different art-based strategy, both to support research as well as to support the envisioning process, and as well to support the prototyping of ideas for change. In this case, the different partners worked with different art-based strategy that involve both visual art, design-based strategy, performative strategy. And after an initial stage that was more exploratory, now we are consolidating different methodological approach that use art to support the different stage of the process, that go from identify a theme of interest, investigate into this topic through art-based research approach, use art-based strategy to support imagining other possibility, etc. So now we are systematizing somehow the different exploration that took place to produce some kind of more actionable knowledge, especially for educator. In this sense, it's not find like the perfect method, because we all know that there is no perfect method, but we look at, for instance, at aspects that we think are quite relevant, that, for instance, in several cases, it was reported that the use of art-based method allow group member that has had less voice, let's say in a debate or in discussion, to find their position and start to get engaged. Also, it allowed to look at things from different perspective and support other way of deliberating, that it's not just raw debate and discussion, etc. So basically, yeah, I don't know if I answer your question or if you want to.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I also would like to address a point which came to my mind. This is more regarding also maybe related to country differences and perspectives that students have in relation to political governments. And did you perceive or also non-democratic mindsets of young students, and how did you deal with these perspectives in a democratic way?
Okay, yes. In this case, well, from the initial analysis, especially in certain countries, as for instance in Spain, we observe that several young people involved tended to move toward anti-democratic position or either far right position, that somehow we also had the feeling that in certain moment this was a way for provoking both the facilitator, the researcher, and the teacher. And I think that when on the one hand, it has to do with the fact that at least here in several countries right now, the far right is somehow the movement that look for rupture, and teenagers often are interested in break from previous frames. So this can be things. How we deal with this kind of position in a democratic way, basically, well, each country did it in a different way, but something that worked well was then try to situate this idea in their everyday experience. Like, but well, of course, we did not expect to produce big political shift, but well, it was something that was emerging, that especially in certain country, some young youth, some of the youth involved were expressing this kind of position.
Well, this is somehow concerning.
Yeah.
Okay, I would hand over to Georges. Here's also a question.
Diana, and thank you, Lara, for your presentation. I see that there are overlaps, but also differences, for example, between the two projects, as far as the competencies are concerned, because we seem to have like critical thinking and deliberation as common competencies, but the other two, we have four also, I don't know if you're aware of them, they differ. So I wonder, I mean, and of course, agency is something that we would like to see as a result of all competencies, but you have it there as more clearly competence. I would be interested in seeing what was the result of that and your thoughts, but also when you said that there is no imagination or people don't have perhaps good examples to draw from, and they are landed in a reality which has a lot to do with social media and extreme positions, including from the extreme right. Did you take that into account? What are the, sorry, to have alternatives and imagination, you need to know your history, perhaps you need to have a connection to your community. If you are stuck with your computer and you have another community online that does not correspond to your daily 3D world community, I mean, there are all these problems raised there. So I wonder whether you also dealt with that. Thanks.
Okay, so well, basically, I try to address, I think there are three questions here regarding the competence. Basically, we elaborated them through an initial consultation of different competency framework for democratic education, together with the specificity of the model that has to do, for instance, with the use of art-based method. And for this reason, there is this creative and imaginative competence as a key feature. Regarding the transformative agency competencies, as you said, I think it was an aim. However, right now, like within the power cycle that have been carried on, there are few examples where there were really changes related to transformative agency. And these are those power cycles that are more bigger extension in time and are more connected with specific issue of a local community. In other cases, instead, when this power cycle took place in some or addressed themes that were more abstract, this kind of transformative agency do not really was not really supported by the intervention. Also, in several cases, the intervention was quite short. So yeah, it's really hard to change transformative agency with short intervention. So in this sense, the competency that we addressed were this one. Regarding the aspect related to the difficulty in imagining alternative and the relation with digital technology, I believe that there is a strong relation. Nonetheless, we did not go deeper into the causes of this because, well, basically we don't have enough data to understand why this happened. But it's more like saying, okay, this is what happened. These are the way in which young people imagine their future. But I think it's something that I would like to research more in the future. But right now we didn't collect enough data to understand the root causes of this.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then Fabian has another question.
Yes, I'm interested in the social background of the young people you have been working with. Is it across a different spectrum, or did you address a particular group?
It's across a different spectrum. Basically, well, the main requirements was the age range being between 14 and 18, and they belong to most of the power cycle took place in secondary school or high school, well, depending on the local system, and generally in public schools. While some other took place in extracurricular setting like Fab Labs or maker spaces. And well, there were a big variety of context which involved both people from unrepresented social group as well as people that are not underrepresented. So it depends a little bit on the specificity of each country.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I would like to ask another thing, Laura, because I came across this when I was reading the project more in detail, that within the Critical Change Lab project, you developed a Democracy Health Index. Maybe you can explain this tool a little bit, and also why did you develop it? And yes.
Well, basically, this was the instrument together with a questionnaire that was developed at the beginning of the project to map the situation of democracy among educational institutions, both formal education like schools from secondary to high school, and as well as non-formal educational institution. And basically, it's a questionnaire that we ask director of, well, people involved in the, I don't know the name in English, directive group of the school to answer this questionnaire to reflect on how they have or not democratic practices in their educational context. Basically, it's a self-assessment measure to allow the teachers to reflect on whether or not their school are working in a democratic way.
Mm-hmm. I think this is very interesting. And did you see any country differences? Were the perceptions different in?
Well, to be honest, I was not involved in the analysis of the different countries, so I cannot really answer this question right now.
Doesn't matter. Then I was also thinking about the long-term impact of the project, so to say. And what do you think would be needed in order to integrate the critical change lab approach on the long run into public schools, and what maybe also challenges could arise?
Well, right now, the next stage of the process of the project, it's related to its socioeconomic evaluation that will start in September, where basically we are going both to research exactly which are the resources that are needed to make this kind of model sustainable, as well as to speak with relevant stakeholders related to educational policy to see the feasibility of this approach in their educational context. Also, in a parallel way, we are carrying out a specific action for training trainee, both related to teacher training as well as to professional development. So in this sense, I think that at least for the situation in Spain, there are several initiatives that work with similar models, where it is possible to find a fit and also a place for debate. It was very interesting because we recently had a conference to speak with people related to educational policy and educators here in Spain regarding this aspect. So I think that in this sense, it's well, a process that will be carried out specifically during the next year. But yeah, I think that at least in Spain, there is a certain coherence between the model and things that are already being carried out in a secondary school. So in this sense, it can have some kind of good fit. And what else? Yes, but it's something that I think it should be very context specific, like that each country has different reality. Yeah. So it's something that should be very situated.
I understand. I would come to my last question now. If anybody has something more to comment, please raise your hand again. And this is now when we focus on the Democrat project and the Critical Change Lab project. What do you think? How do both projects complement each other?
Well, okay, I think that for instance, for what as far as what I know from the Democrat, it as like a more bird eye view with a lot of people involved, and also an implementation that took place in a lot of different places following a very well, with a good capacity, good yes, to fit different educational needs. So in this sense, I think that there are some similarity and also some difference, and I think that since they go along a similar line, I think can be relevant to find more circumstance to share the project in order to build upon each other.
Yes, and I think especially to have a stronger voice regarding the topic. No, if we meet each other and share our findings, and you have data now on student views and how they perceive democracy, and so I think this is very important to merge what has been found out and to address this to policymakers also, and to see especially what you mentioned in Spain, that we have young people that are having more and more non-democratic mindsets, that policymakers become aware of this. They are already, I know, but that there needs to be done something in the school settings also, and so yeah. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. So then if you want to say a few last words, Laura, if not, it's fine, however you want.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And well, it has been a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, also thank you very much from our side. And I don't know if we meet in Barcelona for the conference of Democrats.
Yes.
So then we see each other face to face. And well, again, thank you very much. And for everybody here in YouTube, this is our last session before our summer break. And then we are back again on the 1st of October. And probably we will also have a democracy talk in September, but I will update you then. And
thank you very much.
have a very nice summer.